Hello lovely people, it's Nicola in the Stitches and Slapdashery kitchen. I'm feeling a little restless today. I have the whole day uncluttered, uncommitted, which is wonderful. I'm feeling so grateful today for everything. It's a beautiful day. It's a really soft temperature right now. It is certainly not Christmas, but this is one of my favourite mugs. So it's going to be a mixture of sun and cloud all day and a fairly comfortable temperature. There's going to be some hot ones this week. I think tomorrow it might get to 32. But oh well. Tomorrow I should be on a road trip with my friend to go to the fabric shop. So that will be fun. So I'm not exactly a person who's keen on housework, and I did do quite a bit of tidying around yesterday because the sewing machine repairman came. So I thought, okay, we need to make sure certain things are clean and tidy just in case. And in the end, he just went straight to my sewing room and then left straight after. He didn't use the bathroom or come into the kitchen or anything, but it's good to have it tidy. I have done 2 loads of laundry, one of which is already on the washing line outside. I feel like such a British person hanging my stuff outside. One of my neighbours made fun of me once, years and years ago, for hanging my things outside, and I'm like, but why not? Saves you money. It uses free solar power. Let me see. So because I have time on my hands, and I did start a bag yesterday, but I'm going to do that after I have got this cake made. I started a bag and I did try and get some footage of me winding some I-cord out of sock yarn on my little mechanical I-cord maker from Prim, a knitting mill they called it on the box. I know there's another one called an embellish knit, which does the same thing. And of course, back in the day, we used to use a knitting Nancy or a spool, a wooden spool with nails hammered in the top. These days, we have mechanical versions. I don't know if I managed to get any usable footage out of that because I was faffing about with that and it wasn't working out when I first got started. But it inspired me to make a bag in certain colours and with some old denim. Before I get back to that, cake time. Family are always happy when I do some baking. I wasn't sure what to make. I had a look in the larder to see what ingredients I had, and in the end I went for lemon cake. It's really simple. It's in this book, How It All Began, by Tanya Barnard and Sarah Kramer. This is one of the first books I bought when I came to Canada. I think it first was published in the 1990s, and I also bought the sequel to that, The Garden of Vegan, and a couple of years ago I saw these, I think, on Amazon, and I thought how nice it would be to have fresh copies because my old copies were all marked up and food splashed, and you know, it's in a way it's nice to have a marked up cookbook, isn't it? Because you make certain adaptations to recipes when you're making them, or in my case, I'm frequently doubling them for my ravenous hoard. But yeah, this was called, I think it was called, oh yeah, the 10th anniversary edition. And I had some sad news recently. Sarah Kramer, this lady here, I recently heard she had brain cancer. And I don't think, at the time, she didn't have long to live. She might have since actually died. I have not heard on the grapevine that she has died, but I know that her husband was arranging a GoFundMe to help with her treatment. And I just felt like she was an old friend, you know, because I've been using her recipes for so long. So let's get started. And we'll think about poor Sarah while we're making her cake recipe. I have my 1.5 cups of flour in my bowl. I had to go off and do that over on the other side of the kitchen because I buy my flour in 20-kilogram bags. 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now this recipe calls for a lemon extract, which I don't have, but I'm going to add some of the lemon juice. It's lemon zest and lemon extract, so I'm going to use lemon juice and lemon zest. And I think what I'm going to do afterwards, well, I know what I'm going to do afterwards, is I'm going to use the devil's sugar, aka icing sugar, super white stuff, and make a lemon drizzle with some icing sugar and some more lemon juice. And that'll make it more lemony. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. What I like about their recipes, Barnard and Kramer, is how simple they are. Anyone could make them. They're not complicated. They don't have a massive long list of ingredients. They're just really easy. 3/4 cup of dry sweetener. I am going to be using coconut sugar. Now with lemon cake, you're probably, when you think of lemon cake, you imagine something very white, don't you? Very, very white. But I'm using whole wheat flour and I'm using coconut sugar because I love the taste of coconut sugar. It's got a kind of a caramel flavor and smell to it. It's just awesome. I'm not doubling this recipe. I did consider it, but I thought, no, I won't double it. We'll just stick to one quantity. See how it comes out. With the lemon juice in, it should react nicely with the baking powder and give it lots of lift. That's what I'm hoping anyway. 3/4 cup of soy milk. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the soy milk into a 1 cup measure and add some lemon juice to it to make it curdle. Whether you want to do a buttermilk substitute, adding a bit of lemon juice to your milk makes it like buttermilk. All my dry ingredients are in the bowl, so I'm just going to make a well in the middle and then put all my wet ingredients in the middle and then stir it all once they're all in. So I'm putting the juice of half a lemon in with my soy milk. Some recipes say to leave it sit for a while, but really it curdles really fast. So that's going in. It goes really sludgy, almost like yogurt. Now I get to play with my new toy. When I was stickering clearance items at Michael's a couple of weeks back, I found one of these. I think they were completely changing out all of their cake decorating stuff for a new colorway. It's kind of wasteful, isn't it? I mean, to me, cooking utensils are not a seasonal thing. But I took advantage of the fact that they were putting these kitchen scissors and this lemon zester on clearance, and I got them cheap. So I guess I shouldn't complain, should I? Got my lemons. Ooh. Oh, it's so sharp. I'm going to have to be so careful of this. Oh, look at that. So if you just drag it on the lemon, it is perfect. Normally, I use the my grater. I've got one of those box graters that just stands on your countertop, and it has a side which does the zesting. But what I find is that it leaves most of the zest in the holes and you can never get them out. This is catching the zest beautifully. So I had a late shift yesterday. I worked from 4:30 till closing. I don't usually do that shift. and it's not very busy as a rule, unless it's around Christmas, of course. But at this time of the year, it's pretty quiet. So I was on the till, and there was a whole cart of flowers that had been pulled out of the display because they were all in the wrong place, I think, and they were just sitting there in a cart. And I thought, okay, I'll go through them all and I'll see if any of them are clearance. I'll see which ones are spring and summer, and which ones are supposed to go back in the main aisle on the center of the store, which is not the seasonal area. Sort it all out. And when I had finished sorting, I put these big bunches of flowers into two of the bins that we have. We have these big buckets that are either metal or kind of not wicker, but they're, yeah, like wood, light wood. And they look so pretty. And I thought I could see why people get into flower arranging, because I don't do flower arranging particularly. And I just put them together how I think they look nice. And they're so pretty that anyone could have made those look nice. So I put them in the front area where customers will see them when they're in the front of the store. And I just thought that was fun. I could do that. I could do that more often. Hey, I'm going to get my little silicone pastry brush out and just brush that out. Well, that worked really well. I enjoyed that, and I didn't scratch myself or draw blood, so that's a bonus. 10 out of 10. I'll keep that aside in case I decide to put some zest into the icing as well. 1/4 cup of oil, that's quite nice. It's fairly low fat, this recipe. 1/4 cup of oil between 5 of us is definitely acceptable. Since prices have gone up so much, haven't they gone up like everywhere? For various reasons. I basically stopped buying olive oil because it got to the point where olive oil was about $40 a bottle. Maybe not quite, but it felt like that. And so I've been buying this one from Costco. It's organic sunflower oil by Terra. We were buying the olive oil by them, and now we're getting this one. And you get a massive bottle for way less money. That's interesting. It's actually a product of Ukraine. Oh, go me. I'm supporting Ukraine. Hadn't even looked at that before. But that makes me happier. Now I need egg replacer. Now there's a bunch of different ways you can do egg replacer. Just going to mix it up in a cup measure because I don't know what happened to my little jug. In the old days, before the advent of certain products which you could buy, I used to use soy flour just mixed with a little bit of water, and that would add a bit of protein and a bit of binding ability to your baking. It was really for the binding. And these days I mostly use this Bob's Red Mill egg replacer, and it's, what's the main ingredient in it? Potato starch, tapioca flour, baking soda, and psyllium husk. So it just provides that extra little binding thing. A tablespoon of it mixed with some water is the equivalent of 1 egg. And being the slapdash cook that I am, I don't measure the water. That's just me. If you're a slapdash cook, you simply have to call yourself an intuitive cook, and it sounds so much better. It just means you eyeball things and you adapt recipes if you think they've said too much or too little of something. And you know, it mostly works out. When I was on holiday in Jersey back in April, I decided to make a cake without a recipe. And I was at my sister's and I wasn't sure whether she had all the ingredients I really wanted. And so I should have just hunted better to the back of the cupboard, because it turned out she did have baking soda and baking powder. But instead I used self-raising flour, which, as you may know, has baking powder already mixed in. And for my wet ingredients, I mixed up, I used the blender and I used soft tofu along with some other things. And let's just say it came out really dense. Very dense. Oh, my oven's ready. Perfect timing. So it came out with a texture I would describe as bread pudding texture. If you're British, you've probably had bread pudding. It's very dense, quite stodgy. It was tasty though. It had some raisins in it, and it tasted good. But it didn't really rise. It was about this thick. And yeah. People were very nice about it. They said, oh, it tastes really good. And I'm like, it does, but it's not exactly pretty. I always like to leave a little bit on the spatula for me to enjoy once I've put my cake in the oven. Well, I'm using an 8-inch round cake pan, and I've lined it with baking parchment, because I always line things with baking parchment. So I never want to wrestle them out of there afterwards. It's not particularly full, but I think with all that lemon juice and baking powder in there, it'll probably rise nicely. It says 25 to 30 minutes, so I think I will try putting on my timer for 25. And then I'll poke it and see. It might need an extra 5. And I might as well make my frosting now as well. Obviously it can't go on until the cake is cool, but let's just grab a small bowl for that. I'm always a bit shocked by how much icing sugar recipes call for. When you're supposed to make icing, it's like 2.5 cups of icing sugar. Really? So I'm not sure how much to do. It's not a very large cake, and I just wanted a drizzle on the top. I'm going to use a bigger bowl, because one of the things I've found with icing sugar is you do need to sift it. There's a channel I follow. What's his name? Nard Dog Cooks. His name's Andrew Barnard, or Barnard, depending. And whenever he's showing you his mise en place, you know, when he's getting everything prepped for his recipes, he always loses his teeny tiny whisk. And it really is small. It's like probably this long. And so you know that as he's doing it, at some point, he's going to be looking for his little whisk to mix up his spices. And you'll find it buried under a pile of vegetables or something. Isn't it fun how everyone has their own little quirk, right? I think having a quirk or something unique to you really helps when you're putting yourself out there on YouTube. Well, it's really gluey. I may have to add a little more liquid to that. Oh yeah, I was going to put some lemon zest in that, wasn't I? Let's see. Oh yeah, I could trickle that. It's so quiet outside right now. I love it. Best thing about this time of the year is having the windows wide open, because you don't need to heat the house, you don't need to cool the house. The downside to having your windows open is that if the neighbours are up to anything, or if the dogs bark all day, then you've got to put up with that. Right now I can hear a bit of traffic, and that's all. Oh, and a plane going over. Fine with that. We did a little bit of gardening on the weekend. Well, Mr. Stitches spent ages out there thinning the apricot tree, because we've got a really good crop of apricots on the tree this year. We had nothing last year. And we're looking forward to hopefully getting lots of ripe fruit on there in a couple of months' time. August is when they normally ripen up. It's promising. As long as the tree doesn't get really dry and stressed and start dropping its fruit before they're ready, we'll be fine. A lot of plants are getting stressed right now. Local vineyards have all replaced, or mostly replaced, all their vines this year, because last year we had a -21 cold snap at the time when things were ramping up for spring, and it damaged so many plants. Even our massive walnut tree out the back there has got some bare branches on it even now because they didn't survive that. So yeah, that was 1 cup of sugar. It doesn't look a lot, but I think it'll be good enough. The kitchen smells lovely. And this is done. As I said, not a very pale lemon cake, but it's going to taste awesome. Now, the question is, do I want to tip it off this baking parchment? We're going to risk it. Ouch, that's hot. That smells so good. All right, we're going to let that cool, and then I can trickle the frosting over it a bit later. It'll disguise the fact there's a couple of stab marks in the top of my cake. Because I'm impatient and because I want to get downstairs and do some sewing, I have put this on it to wire rack over a plate, and I'm going to do my frosting now. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, the frosting looks like it's going to be rather quite a lot. So much for trickling. It's just going to be a pouring job, I think. I never claimed to be a cake decorator. Hoping that because it's a little bit warm still, that it won't just all slide off into the plates. I could probably have got away with half a cup of sugar and the lemon juice and the lemon rind instead. Now that the cake is made and tempting me, but of course I cannot eat it till later when the family is all together, I'm going to get back to this bag. I did get a little bit of footage yesterday when I started it, but I don't know how usable it's going to be. So we're just going to have a little review here. I pulled out my Prim knitting mill, which I've had for years and years. And it's just a hand-cranked I-cord maker. So you just wind it And when you put the yarn up and through and down, you put this weight on the bottom because it needs that weight so that the yarn doesn't jump off your hooks here. And then you have to keep moving the weight up. Every time it gets towards the floor, you have to move the weight up. So as it gets longer, it gets a little bit more annoying, but it's certainly a nice quick way of getting the I-cord made. Now this would have been longer. In fact, I was planning to do the whole ball of yarn, but I got to a little spot where a couple of stitches jumped off my hooks. So I ended up just sticking to this. This is about 3 yards or about 3 meters long. And it's a sock yarn, so it's got some fun variations in it. Purples and then a little stripe section. And yeah, I don't have the patience for knitting with sock yarn anymore, if I ever did. So that inspired me to then pull out some purple fabrics from the stash. So I've got this purple solid for the lining. I've got this wacky piece of purple fabric with pineapples and things on it, which I think I'm going to use for a couple of pockets on the inside. I've cut my interfacing. This is a medium weight woven fusible, and I cut it a little bit smaller because if I ever cut it the right size, it always seems to overflow and then stick to my iron or my ironing surface. So I cut that a little bit smaller than my 12 by 13. These 2 pieces of jean leg are for my draw cord casings, which I'll need to just hem at each end and then fold in half, ready to go in the bag. Let's get the iron heating right now. And this is from 2 different pairs of jeans. This one, I've used the denim sideways. I like this seam a lot, so I didn't want to cover it up. But this is from yet another pair of jeans, and it's just a little piece patch. So I've just sewn that on there for fun. So I'm going to interface that bit. I know denim's pretty sturdy and really doesn't necessarily need interfacing, but it's got quite a bit of stretch, which can wreck your work when you're sewing it. And this piece, I've put because I had to use what I have, right? So this seam is vertical purely because that's how it fitted out of the denim leg. And I sewed a patch pocket from another pair of jeans on there. Of course, these little studs are always just a little bit annoying because I can't sew through them. So I had to stop the sewing as close as I could there. So it flaps about a bit, but that's all right. And I did it in black. I didn't take out any of the original stitching on the patch pocket. So you can still see the orangey stitching or brownie stitching. And then I just did black in between the lines there, which you can kind of see there. So while I do this, let's chat. One of my kids, okay, I have 3 boys, and I say boys, but they are ranging in age from 26 to 33. At least 2 of them. If they had not been homeschooled, I just know they would have got some sort of diagnosis, whether it was autism spectrum or ADHD, probably ADHD for sure. The oldest manages it himself. He's never wanted to go to a therapist or get a diagnosis or anything. Middle guy is currently going through a psych evaluation to get his diagnosis. Apparently there are benefits to doing so. You get help. You get help with all sorts of things. Official help, I mean. And feeling like it might help him get along with the next stage of his life. So my friend said to me the other day, she said, so you do know, right, that if your kids have ADHD, that means one of you parents must have ADHD, because it doesn't just appear from nowhere. I thought, okay, well, I didn't know that. And I thought, well, let me see. If I had to pick one person between Mr. Stitches and myself who may have undiagnosed ADHD, I think I'd have to pick myself. I remember I did used to get very, very wound up as a kid and have to pace. And I had certain coping strategies, which I suppose these days might be called stimming. But I feel like I've been a pretty, okay, we're going to use the word normal here. I know nothing's normal these days, but anyway, I always thought I was a pretty standard sort of person. Nothing out of the ordinary. But I'm looking at my absolute inability to do nothing and just sit, say, and watch a TV show without having something to do with my hands, and my inability to have nothing on the agenda and then just allow it to be nothing on the agenda. I can't just sit and do nothing. And I have to make stuff. And all of this ADHD-ness, I suppose, if that's what it is causing me to create a whole bunch of stuff, like knitting and crochet and sewing. So I feel like it's not necessarily a negative thing. And I certainly am not going to go seeking a diagnosis, because I don't consider it a problem. So I'd be interested to know what your take is on that. Do you think that if you're a makeaholic like me, that you're basically ADHD? Probably a hot topic, right? I don't know. But I kind of laugh to myself when people talk about neurotypical and neurodivergent now, because it feels like neurodivergent is the typical thing now. And so maybe the whole thing should be switched around so that people who call themselves neurodivergent are actually the typical ones. And the people who were previously known as neurotypical, actually the neurodivergent ones. What do you reckon to that? Because when something that was previously thought to be a minority thing then becomes a majority thing, then maybe all the labels should be switched around. Oh, I'm getting warm. So much steam. So that bag I made in my last vlog, one with the fabric print and the denim and the, what was it, the tape measure twill tape. I put a picture of it up on the Dodgy Bag Make-along thread in Ali's Ravelry group, Little Drops of Wonderful. And I emailed her yesterday and I said I'd like to offer it as a prize in the Dodgy Bag Make-along. So if you haven't previously got interested in that, I suggest you might like to go and watch her videos and get in on that. You might win something fun. If you sew, that is. Actually, even if you don't sew, you don't need to sew a dodgy bag. You can crochet one, you can knit one, you can upcycle it from something. You can hand sew it. I found a new YouTube channel through that thread yesterday or the other day. It's called Sunbird Crochet. And her name is Claudia, and she is in Germany. And she posted to the Dodgy Bag Make-along thread that she was cutting up a crocheted sweater that she made to create a bag. And she was going to get her mum to sew a lining for it, which she did. And she added handles and I think possibly a zipper. And she made a beautiful bag, upcycled from a sweater that she had crocheted that she felt was the wrong colour for her, and it was also just a little bit the wrong size. So I thought that was awesome. So I thought I have to follow this lady. And she has a very relaxed presentation. She speaks excellent English. And yes, she's definitely someone I want to watch more in future. So I have subscribed to her channel. All right, we are steamed. We are steamed. I love how using jeans limits you to a certain size. I think I've said before that if you have a limit to the materials or whatever that you're using, it makes you more creative, because you have to make do with what you have. Now this was a piece that was already this long, so it's about the right length. Once I have turned in the edges, I'm just going to turn them in once, because otherwise it's going to get a bit bulky. So I'll turn that in about 1/2 inch or a centimetre, and then I'll sew along the ends, and then I'll fold it in half, press it. One thing about making bags, or one thing about making a lot of things really, is that there's so much prep before you even get to the sewing part. There's planning and measuring and ouch, burning yourself with the iron and cutting and interfacing. Okay, those pieces are ready to go to the next step. I'm ready to cut my purple fabric now. So somehow I cut one of my lining pieces too small. This one's fine. And so from the fabric I had left, I managed to get almost the right size, but it's just a bit short here. So I'm going to improvise by adding a strip of this fun fabric on the side, and then I will do my patch pocket to the side of it. So it will look completely intentional. So I'm just going to flip that over, sew down that seam, press it open, and then I'll cut some off this side so that it's the 12 inches wide. And then I'll make the pocket. In fact, it probably would be a good idea for me to do that before I cut the piece of my pocket, so I know how much room I have to play with. This is what the inside of the lining is going to look like. Now, I did this, I had to do the print sideways because that was the only way I could get a long enough strip for that. And then I had to cut 2 pieces. So normally what I would have done with the pocket is I would have figured on what width I wanted and added seam allowances, figured out what depth I wanted, doubled it and added seam allowances. Because then I fold it, and the fold usually goes along the top here, and then the opening's here, and I just sew it on. But this print, because of the piece I had, it was very narrow, height-wise, but very wide. So I ended up cutting 2 rectangles by, let's see, what was it, 6.5 by 5.5. Sewing them together, turning them out, and then doing the usual. So that worked. It also meant that instead of having the print upside down on the inside, I was able to have it right side up on both sides and pick which side I liked better for the front. I already also cut a strip for a wristlet, which I'm probably going to incorporate in the seam on the outside. And that was 2.5 by 12. So I just folded it in on itself. So the raw edges are all in the inside, and it worked out. I don't know what it worked out. Let's have a look. About somewhere between 5/8 and 3/4 of an inch. So I think most of my prep is done now, and I can get started on more sewing. I hemmed these drawstring channels and I have basted them on, well, I actually used just my regular stitch length, and I did it within the seam allowance, so that the seam allowance here is about 1/4 inch. My ultimate seam allowance will be 3/8. I don't know if I have a preference as to which is the front of this bag. Really is not going to be a specific front and back, so it doesn't really matter which of these lining pieces go where, I suppose. Maybe because there's a pocket there, I'll attach that pocket to that side. I can't remember if I already said, but the sewing machine repairman came yesterday. I must say, it's a very, very big bonus when they can come to your house, spend an hour getting your machine all beautifully running, and go away again, and you don't have to drive all the way to the shop, drop it off, maybe be without it for days or longer. Oh, so nice. It wasn't cheap, but it was worth it. And I spent some of the time chatting to him while he was working, and I was asking him about my serger, this one here, and I said about needles, and he said that I can use the same needles in that machine as I do in this machine. I said, oh, that's strange. I said, I got it secondhand. I didn't really know which needles to put in it, but it came with some needles that were ones that I couldn't buy locally. And he said, oh, those are old ones. You don't want to use those. They had the round shank at the top, and I thought that I was going to have to track some down somehow. And he's like, nope, just use the other ones. So any ballpoint or jersey or stretch needles that I have in my little drawer there, I can use in there. So I'm really glad I asked him about those. He said that's a good machine, it should last forever, which I kind of expected because it's a good sturdy Janome. Also, my other mechanical Janome, just a regular machine that I used to use before I bought the computerized one, he said that was a really good machine as well. And they're still making those. So that is awesome to know. I've cut 1.5 inch squares out of my bottom corners for when I box the bottoms. In my last bag, I sewed them, drew them, sewed them, and then cut them off. This time I'm cutting them off and then sewing them. I don't really have a preference to how I do that. And I've basted my little wristlet strap in place up here. So now we just got to put it all right sides together and sew around. I do like drawstring bags for their simplicity. I have put a whole bunch of zippers into bags, and it's not like they're really, really hard, but they do just add another little level of complexity which could potentially go wrong. I'm not sure how well the denim drawstring casings are going to bunch up when I put the drawstring in them. If I'd been thinking, I could probably have used that purple fabric instead. Too late now. I'm not unpicking it. Well, that's not matching up too well, is it? Should be exactly the same. One of the nice things about bags is that you can hide all the oopsies on the inside. So this top part is sticking out further on this side, and the bottom one is sticking out further on that side. Oh, great. All come out the wash, as they say. I'm going to put a pin in the side seam. Another thing I tend to vary is where I leave my opening or turning gap. And if you're opening a bag and looking down inside it when it's done, I think it's more obvious if you've put the seam down here. And you know me, I am not going to hand stitch it shut to make it invisible. I think this is probably my favourite part of bag making. Birthing the bag. Now if I'm using my head, I will do a quick press of the seam allowances here. Not all the way around necessarily, but just on these side pieces. I'm getting a little headachy. I think it's time for a break. So it's probably a good thing that this is almost done. I do like to make sure the seam allowances are open here, because when you turn it out, you want to, when it folds over on itself, it's really nice if they are open. And that's why I try and remember, I don't always, but I try and remember to do the top stitching before I've closed that hole in the lining, because sometimes you have to reach in through the hole in the lining and fiddle with those seam allowances a little bit. And then where the opening is, it's nice to just do a bit of a press along there too. That way, when you're closing it up with a little bit of a top stitch line, the place you want to fold it is already set. I did what I normally do, and I made the seam allowances on the lining a little bit bigger so that the lining sits inside the bag a bit less baggily. Baggily. That sounds funny, doesn't it? Baggily. But yes, it's a bit less baggy if you make the lining a bit smaller. Hoping that that I-cord made out of the sock yarn is going to be strong enough to work with the denim, especially considering the I-cord was what inspired this bag in the first place. Oops. I put these to good use today. If you don't know what this is, it's called a hump jumper. And when you're coming up to a lumpy bit where your machine often struggles, you can put, depending on the thickness, you can put this in front of the needle and it'll sew between these parts, but the foot will stay level, and it just helps it get past that. And you can also put it behind So if you're starting on a lumpy bit and then going downhill, no, hang on a minute, you put it in front if you're going downhill. If it needs to go uphill, you're behind the bump and you need to go uphill, you put it behind the foot. Trouble is, because I wanted to use my walking foot for my top stitching, it's got a really big back to it. I'll show you the other one. It's got this massive chunky thing back here, which means that of course you can't put this behind it because it won't reach because of this big thing here. So I used my head and I just used a really thick piece of fabric behind the walking foot when I was heading over these sorts of things. There was a big lump here and a bit of a lump at the seams and also where the channels are, and it was hesitating to get past that. So by using that, I managed to get past it and I'm really pleased with the outcome. What's the sewing machine guy did yesterday, he took both of my walking feet and he ground out a little bit on each one, just where the needle comes down in front. So he just took a little bit of the metal out in the hope that I won't have any more issues with the needle hitting the metal and breaking. He did confirm that my needle was in the perfect position because I was worried it might be in the wrong place. So there we go. Nice little pocket, little extra feature, which was totally unintended, but you know. A nice little wristlet. And let's see, one spot in this had a little bit of a messy part. Where is it? There's a little loose bit somewhere. I lost track of a stitch or two in a couple of places because I dropped the machine or I was moving the weight. I think I had to put it down to move the weight up. Oh, it doesn't look too bad. Okay, good. So I just need to figure out how long to make these. Maybe I'll thread it through and then cut it. Well, I'm really pleased with that. That's what one side looks like with the little piece patch on it. The other side with the pocket on it. Moment of truth. See how these work. I did wonder about that. Because the denim is pretty stiff and bulky, it doesn't want to cinch up all the way. But I don't have a problem with that. Always tie that together. But yeah, in future I would probably stick with the quilt cotton as a drawstring channel rather than the denim. I do like how the denim looks. We just got back from our evening walk. That was a pretty good day. Baking and sewing and walking. And there's still a couple of hours of the day left to do a little bit of crochet or reading. So all in all, pretty wonderful day off. Thanks very much for watching once again, and I'll see you again next time for something else.